Hey everybody, we'll talk about decimals today. So we're going to focus just a little bit of review here on this. If we're talking about this decimal, this is usually we would say 0.1, but actually the correct way to say that, this would be 1/10. This is the tenths place. This here is the tenths place again. And then this is in the hundredths place. And if we were to say this number right here, this is 1/100th. It's not 0.01. I mean, we'll still refer to it as 0.01 in class. We'll call this one 0.001. But like I said, if you were actually going to say it properly, this is 1/100th. And then this is 1,000th. We've got tenths, hundredths, thousandths place. So this is 1,000th. And if we were to write that as a fraction, when you say the decimal properly, like this 1,000th, 100th, 1/10, when you say it properly, it's really easy to write it as a fraction. 1/10, 100th, 1,000th. So how do I say a number like these two? I've got what we would normally just say 7.9 and 3.419. If I were to actually say these properly, this is, I've got 7 whole or 7 ones, and then the decimal is going to tell us that now we're going to go into the fractions of a whole number. This is the tenths place, so we've got 7 and 9/10. So usually we'll put an and in there for the decimal point. So 7 and 9/10. And then for this next one, we've got 3 whole, and then this is 419 thousandths. So we've got 7 and 9/10, and then 3 and 419 thousandths, if we were to write them as a mixed number. All right, so far all of this has been a review, and hopefully you've been able to follow along and maybe even anticipate what I'm going to say, and that's great if you are. We're going to do some adding, subtracting, some multiplying and dividing with decimals, and then we'll work with decimals, fractions, and percentages, and going, if I give you one of those, you should be able to give the other two. So we'll do some adding, subtracting now. All right, so we're going to be adding up 25.6 and 17.12, or 25 and 6/10 plus 17 and 12/100. The way we do that is when you're adding and subtracting, you're going to line up the decimal. Okay, so adding, subtracting, line up the decimal. All right, so we'll do that right now. We've got 25.6 plus 17.12. We don't write, there's an infinite number of zeros after this 6. So if we need to put a 0 here, we can, no problem. So we've got 25.60 plus 17.12. Let's just add it up. So we do just like we normally would. This is 2. Then we'll have 7. Decimal point comes straight down, so the decimals are lined up, and our decimal place will be in the same spot. And then 5 and 7 is 12, so we'll carry that 1, and that will give us 42 and 72 hundredths. So this is our answer, 42 and 72 hundredths. All right, now because we've been working with negatives and positives, we're going to get negative and positive decimals as well. So I've got negative 15 and 64 hundredths here, plus 12 and 7/10. Our rules are going to be the same. We have an addition statement, so we don't have to change it to an addition statement or anything. It's already an addition statement. We have different signs. This is a negative. This one's a positive. So our rule states that when we're adding the adding in integers rule, which we can apply to decimals, and we can also apply it to real numbers here. What we'll do is we've got different signs. So this number has the greater absolute value, so that means there are more negatives here. And what we'll do is our sign is going to be, our sum is going to be a negative. And then because they're different signs, we're going to subtract the absolute values, just like we've been doing. It's the same exact process as what we did with integers. And now we'll just do this. Stack them up, make sure we line up our decimals, and we can put a 0 after that 7 because there's an infinite number of zeros there. And now we'll just do our subtraction. So 4 minus 0 is 4. I need to borrow here, so this will be 4. And then this is 16 minus 7. So it's going to be 9. And then we've got our decimal points going to come straight down. And then 4 minus 2 is 2. And 1 minus 1 is 0. So this is 2.94. Don't forget, and that's why it's important to write this step here, because it'll remind you, hey, there's a negative. So your answer is negative 2 94 hundredths. So what you'll notice is I stuck to my process that we've already learned here, and I just worked down the page, simplifying that. I did have to do a little bit of arithmetic, and I did that kind of off to the side. I didn't really have much room, but I did that away from this stuff here. So if you need to do something like this, just do it off to the side. Just do a quick little arithmetic or a calculation. That's totally fine. But make sure you keep this nice and orderly and neat so that you can go back and find any mistakes that you may have made along the way. Okay, here's another example. This time we got subtraction. So our first step is to write it as an addition statement by adding the opposite. So we'll change the operation to addition, and we'll change the second number to its opposite. So now we have negative 19 and 77 hundredths plus 21 and 2/10. Okay, so we've got an addition statement now, so we can check our signs. So this one is a negative, this one is a positive. So we have different signs. So the sign of our answer is going to come from the number with the greater absolute value, which is this one. So our answer is going to be a positive, or our sum will be a positive. And then since they're different signs, I will take the difference between the absolute values. And then off to the side, I'll just do my computation. So stack up my decimal. There we go, and subtraction. So this is a 0. So we're going to have to borrow here. So this is 1, and then we got 10 minus 7 is 3. Borrow, this is 0. So we got 11 minus 7 is 4. Decimal point comes straight down, and then we'll have to borrow again. So 10 minus 9 is 1.43. So our answer, we've got a positive answer, so we can leave that, and then it's 1 and 43 hundredths. Okay, so we're going to multiply and divide decimals right here. The first thing we're going to be multiplying 6/10 times 21 hundredths. And the book shows it a little bit different than maybe many of you have learned, and maybe in the same way that different than the way I learned as well. The way the book shows it is actually kind of neat. You simply change 6/10 and 21 hundredths to fractions. Whoops. Here we go. 6/10 times 21 hundredths, and then you just multiply these fractions. You can cross cancel like we have done. You can just multiply straight across as we have done, and then simplify. Either way is totally fine. I'm actually going to just multiply straight across here because both of my denominators are multiples of 10, and I'll show you why in a second, why I'm not going to simplify or cross cancel. So I multiply my numerators straight across. So 6 times 21, that's going to be 126, and then 10 times 100, that's 1,000. And the reason I didn't cross cancel is because I'm going to be left, because these are multiples of 10, I'm going to be left with another multiple of 10 here, and so now it's 1,000. So 126 thousandths, I can easily write that as a decimal, because that would be 0.126. Remember, this is the tenths, hundredths, thousandths place, so 126 thousandths is 0.126. So that's an easy change between decimal and fraction. So that's a pretty easy way to do it. I do like that way. A lot of us have learned if you have 0.6 times 0.21, you can just multiply them like this. You do not have to line up the decimals. And you get 6, and then 2 times 6 is 12, so we get 12, and that's all we have to do. And then you have 3 numbers behind the decimal, so your decimal is going to start here, and you're going to move it 1, 2, 3 times, so your decimal ends up there. So this is 0.126. Either way is totally fine with me. If you want to multiply your decimals like this, or if you want to try this, this is actually a pretty easy way to do it. I like that way. We'll do a couple more examples. Now, let's do 2.4 times 3.6. We can do it the book's way, or one way that the book shows. I shouldn't say it's the book's way. It's just one way that they show. The way that this way, it's not as efficient when you have a fraction greater than 1. So remember, 2.4 is just, it's basically 2 plus 0.4, and then we'll do times, and then 3 plus 0.6. Decimals are really, when you have a whole number or even a mixed number like 2 and 4/10, which is what this is, and 3 and 6/10, when you write it like this, 2 and 4/10, it's really, you're writing a sum. It's 2 whole numbers and then 4/10 added onto it. So we have this, and what we can do is write both of these, the 2 and the 4/10, as fractions with denominators of 10, because this is 4/10. So this, we'll do that one first. That's 2 and 4, or 4/10. Sorry, I just accidentally pushed stop with the heel of my hand. Okay, so we've got that, and then times, and this will be 3 plus, and then just 6/10. Now I want to write the 2 and the 3 as fractions with a denominator of 10, so I'll multiply top and bottom by 10. So this will become 20/10 plus 4/10 times, and then 30/10 plus 6/10. So this is 24/10 times 36/10. And then all we have to do is multiply straight across now, and we'll get, in the denominator, we'll get 100, so that's easy. And then 24 times 36, that's just, let's see, 24 times 36, 864, so this is 864 hundredths. So we could simplify that and leave it as a fraction, or if we wanted to give it as a decimal, this is 8.64, or 8 and 64 hundredths. So another way to do this, which is a bit easier, is 2.4 times 3.6. We just stack them up, so it's 2.4 times 3.6. Remember, when you're multiplying decimals, you do not have to line up the decimal. So this is 4 times 6, which is, and however you multiply, like whatever algorithm you use, totally fine. Mine might look a little bit different than yours, what I'm going to do right now, and that's totally fine. So 4 times 6 is 4, carry the 2. 6 times 2 is 12, and then plus 2 more, so that's 1, 4, and then placeholder. 3 times 4 is 2, carry that 1. So this is 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 more is 7, and we get, now we just add these up. So this is 4, 6, 8, and we have 2 digits behind the decimal, so I have to move my decimal, which is here right now, move it over twice, so 8.64. Get the same thing. Okay, so we'll do some division now, and I'm gonna let's make this one negative. So I stole this one right out of the book, and when you're dividing, if you want to, you can rewrite it as a fraction, because it does help you to remember which one, when you actually do the long division, which one of them goes here and which one of them goes here. The easiest way to do it is when you write it as a fraction like this, because this is negative 23.492 divided by 0.04, so that's the same as this. The top number is going to fall into this box here. That's how I always remember it. So if we rewrote this, it would be 0.04 into 23.492, and you just have to remember that your answer is going to be negative, because I have one, this is negative, this is positive, and remember the rule: when dividing a negative by a positive, you get a negative. So we'll do our computation over here. I want to make this a whole number, so I'm going to move this decimal over twice. Okay, so we'll move that decimal over twice. So we go 1, 2. So now we have that. If we move the decimal over twice there, we have to move it over twice here. The reason for that is, you already know the reason. It's actually, if we rewrite this fraction here, like this, and I just wrote it without negative signs, I just wrote positives. If I move this decimal over twice, I'm multiplying this by 100. So if I multiply the bottom by 100, I have to multiply the top by 100 as well. And so I would get 2349.2 over 4. And this is an equivalent fraction to this. So when we do our division for this, we'll get the same value here as we would here. That's why it's okay to move this decimal over twice and this one over twice, because all you're doing is multiply top and bottom by 100, which is this quotient here is equal to 1. We're just multiplying it by 1. We're changing how the fraction looks, not changing the value. So I'll rewrite this. This is 4 into 2349.2. Our decimal is going to just come straight up. It's going to be right there no matter what we do. So now, 4 into doesn't go into 2. 4 does go into 23. It goes in 5 times, and that would be 5 times 4 is 20. Subtract these, we'll get 3. Bring down this 4. 4 goes into 34 7 times. Sorry, 8 times. Yikes. That would be 32. Bring this down. And then 4 into 29. That's 7. And then we get 28. Subtract that, we get 1. Bring down the 2. And 4 into 12 is 3 times, and that's going to go evenly. So 587.3, and I'm going to bring my answer that I get here back over here. So this is negative 587.3. Okay, let's convert 1/4 to a decimal. Because we with fractions, decimals, and percents, we need to be able to, if given one of them, either a fraction, a decimal, or a percent, we need to be able to go, like if I give you a fraction, you have to be able to write the decimal equivalent and the percentage. So let's just start with 1/4, and we're going to write 1/4 as a decimal. So like I said before, the top number is going to fall into the box, so this would be 4 into 1. And 4 doesn't go into 1 evenly, so I'll put a decimal point there and I'll put some zeros after that. And so 4 doesn't go into 1, so I get the remainder 1, bring down the 0. This decimal point is going to come straight up here. And then 4 into 10, that's going to go twice. Put an 8. 4 times 2 is 8, so 10 minus 8 is 2. Bring down the 0. And then 4 into 20, that goes 5 times. And 5 times 4 is 20, so our remainder is 0 there, so we're finished. So 1/4, or 1 over 4, is the same as 25 hundredths, or 0.25. Okay, so we've written that fraction as a decimal, so all you have to do, again, is just division. Top number falls into the box, you'll get a decimal, and you can write the fraction as a decimal. There are other ways to do it, but for now we'll leave it at this. We'll leave it at this method. Now, what is a percentage? So percent is, the definition of percent is it's a number out of 100. So so here's our definition, a number out of 100, or it's a ratio whose denominator is 100, same idea. So this is the definition of percentage or percent. So if I have 5%, this is equal to that the number that's out of 100 is the 5 here, so it's 5 over 100. 15% is 15 out of 100. 3.2% is 3.2 out of 100. Okay, so it's really easy to go from a percentage to a fraction because it's whatever is here out of 100. Very simple. If we had 500%, that is 500 out of 100. Okay, so we're going to go from a percentage to a decimal here. To get there, I'm going to write it as a fraction first. So I've got 74% is just, by definition, 74 hundredths. Now, if I say that correctly, 74 hundredths, that is 0.74, because of what we were talking about earlier, going from a decimal to, or a fraction to a decimal. I could also, if I couldn't remember how to go from here to here, I could also just, the 74 would fall into the box and do 100 into 74. Okay, it's 54%. That is 54 out of 100, or 54 hundredths, which is 54 hundredths, which is that decimal right there. Now, when we get something like this, where we have a decimal in there, this is 17.9 hundredths. 17.9 hundredths, I need to get rid of this decimal here. I need to write this as a whole number up there. So to do that, I'm going to multiply this by 10 on the top. And if I multiply the top by 10, I have to do the same thing to the bottom. So this becomes 179 over 1,000, which is easy to write as a decimal because this is 179 thousandths. So that would be 0.179. That's the equivalent decimal to this percentage. Now, what you might notice is that there's a pretty easy way to get from 74% to 74 hundredths, 54%, 54 hundredths, 17.9% to 179 thousandths. The easy way to do that is my decimal for my percentages is right here, here, and then of course this one is right there. Notice that when I'm done writing it as a decimal, the decimal has now been moved to here, 2 places to the left, 1, 2. So that's a shortcut. If you are comfortable with that shortcut, feel free to use it. If you want to go from a percentage to a decimal, you move the decimal in the percent 2 places to the left, and you've got your equivalent percentage. The same thing goes from decimal to percent. If you want to go from a decimal to a percentage, move the decimal 2 places to the right. So if I have the decimal 0.39, and I want to write that as a percentage, well, going from this decimal to this percentage, I move the decimal over twice to get to here, so I will do the same thing here. This decimal will move over twice, and I'll get 39%. Now, if you can't remember which way you go, just take a second and say, okay, 39 hundredths. I can write that as a fraction. Oh, 39 hundredths, by definition, that's equal to 39%, because remember, percentage is just a number out of 100, and 39 out of 100 is, you've already got it out of 100, so it's really easy to go from there. That's just if you can't remember which direction does your decimal go. Okay? Okay, so what I have here is just a quick little table. I have percentage, fraction, and decimal. So I'm given a percent here, I'm given a fraction here, and I'm given a decimal here. We're going to write the equivalent, or whatever's missing for each row. So 15% written as a fraction is 15 over 100. That's an easy one to write as a fraction. Now I got to simplify that. So I can divide top and bottom by 5, so this would be 3/20. a decimal equivalent there because this is 1500ths. That's just 0.15. Okay, so we're done with that one. Let's skip down to this one because it'll be pretty easy. So that if we say that decimal correctly instead of just saying 0.18, this is 1800ths because the 8 is in the hundredths place. So 1800ths written as a fraction is 1800ths. And I can simplify that as well. So divide both by 2 goes into both of them, so that would be 9/50ths. And then our percentage, because this is 18 out of 100, that's simply going to be 18%. Okay, we have 3/5. We're going to write that as a decimal. I'm going to really quickly do that calculation. So remember, the top number falls into the box. So I've got 5 doesn't go into 3, so that's 0, and then the remainder of 3. Bring down the 0, and 5 into 30. Oh, decimal comes straight up, and then 5 into 30 goes 6 times, so 6 times 5 is 30. Boom, we got 0.6. All right, so I've got my decimal, so I'll replace the decimal there. So 3/5 is 0.6. And then from there, we can write our percentage. And then once we have our 6/10, this right here written as a decimal, we can change that to a percent. 6/10, if we say that correctly, it's 6/10. Now I want to write it as a percentage, so I need to have a denominator of 100. So to do that, I'll just multiply top and bottom by 10. Get 60 over 100, so that's 60%. Or if I wanted to, I could remember that the decimal, when you have it in decimal form, if you move that decimal over 1, 2 to the right, you'll get your percentage. So 0.6, and then I'll put some zeros out here. If I move that decimal over 1, 2 times, I get 60.00, which is 60%. So that would be another way to do it. All right, we'll stop here.